I had that surgery finally at the end of '77, which I had to have. It was a brand new surgery. It was a laser surgery. And my doctor said, I don't know if this will help at all. I mean, he didn't have any idea that I was drinking every day, so how would it ever get better anyway? He said, it's never going to get better if you don't have the surgery, and I can't guarantee that it will help you. But you have to have it, because without it, you'll never be able to sing again anyway, so no question there. So the night of this surgery, you know, I had gone under an assumed name. How arrogant is that? I mean, for God's sake, you know, who cared, really? We think fame is this thing that should protect us and keep us, you know, away from normal people. I mean, whoever dreamed of that? Where did that idea ever start? So I'm in the hospital. I've got a half gallon. I've got vodka with me. I take it in a little bag, you know, put it in that little metal container there by the bed. And about midnight, the nurse comes in and she says, I smell alcohol in here. And I said, oh, well, a couple friends came by. We had a couple drinks. Like 3/4 of the half gallon of booze is gone by 1 o'clock, and they're going to operate on me with a major anesthetic at 6 in the morning. They did. I lived. It worked. Somebody up there was running that show, not me. It worked. I still drank in April of 1978. I had been coming apart. All the wheels were coming off. Couldn't stop drinking. Yeah, the surgery was fine. I was able to talk and hum, you know, hum a little bit. Rock of Ages, clap for me. I was right up there with Martin Luther, you know, singing those hymns. But of course I wasn't working. I hadn't been able to work for that past year, really. But things were falling apart, and it was worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I told you, I took everything I could, every pill I could think of, every doctor I went to. I had a whole huge bottle of Quaaludes in my, what are the Quaaludes? Why was he giving me Quaaludes? This huge bottle, but I didn't touch it because I was afraid it would interfere with my drinking. The same reason I wouldn't touch the antabuse. I mean, why would I take an antabuse? You can't drink when you take an antabuse. So these doctors that gave me these prescriptions of antabuse, I mean, to what end? I mean, how did they think they were going to help me by making me quit drinking? There wasn't an alternative. By the way, that was a time when nobody was on Oprah talking about recovery. Nobody was in the movies talking about having had to leave the movies because they were having to go into rehab. It just wasn't happening. So I always like to say this because Patrick really means a lot to my recovery. He was a very famous actor, and I didn't know him at all, but I took an exercise class with his wife. Now I want to tell you that throughout this period, all these years, I always exercised. I was always looking for the right diet. I was always trying to deal with my eating disorder, which we'll talk about privately if you want some discussion later on, how bad it was, and it was bad. I was always trying to find the next cure for whatever it was that was so terribly wrong with me. And of course, all the while I drank. So there was this actor, and I was in this class with his wife, and this was a guy who was a big, handsome, you know, stereotypical handsome actor, marvelous, cool guy. And every once in a while in the paper in New York, I would see him in a real fist fight, bloody fist fight, half his teeth having been knocked down his throat, you know, stretched out on the pavement in New York, and there would be the Daily News photographer snapping him at his worst. And I always said yes, because I knew he'd been drunk, I knew he'd been in a fight, and it was sort of just like home. And one day I came to my senses, and I thought, Patrick has not been in the paper for months. I haven't seen him laid out, being hauled out of a bar by the cops, you know, with blood coming down his face. It was really a disappointment to me. And I thought, you know, there's something odd going on here. Because we all drank, everybody drank. I didn't know anybody who didn't drink except one person. And I didn't want what he had. So I called up his wife and I said, what happened? I don't see him around, you know, I don't. And she said, well, he doesn't drink anymore. I thought, oh, that's a terrible thing. Really, those who are busy getting off this train, they're cowards, really, they're cowards. I mean, we can win this. We can do this. Meantime, isn't it rich, are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Was shooting up the charts again. Another hit, another top 10 wonder. So I said, well, Cynthia said, you want to talk to him? And I said, yeah, sure. I want to find out what ails him. So I called him up. I called him, he was in California. I didn't know him. I mean, I really didn't know him at all, but he was very sweet. He was doing a movie, and he called me back on his dime, and he spent 45 minutes on the phone with me. And he said, here's where you go. Here are the people you talk to. These are the things you do, and you go see this doctor. So I'd been to however many doctors I'd been trying to find out what was wrong with me without actually telling them how much I drank. I mean, I have to admit. Yes, I drink a lot, but, you know, it's a psychological problem. Anyway, I went to see this doctor. His name is Stanley Gitlow, and he's a great man, and he helped alcoholics for decades when nobody else would help us, and nobody else knew what to do with us. So I went to see him, and he said, I said, I'm dying, and he said, yeah, you are. He didn't talk about highballs. He didn't talk about how I could change my drinking or my habits, or here's a few pills to take, this will help you. He said, yes, you are dying. And then he smiled. He seemed so happy about it, you know. He was thrilled. He was thrilled. Oh, we got a live one, and she's dying. Great. It's like, you know, when you say, just drama-free world. If the drama's going on, you know, the whirling dervishes can whirl because I'm not interested. I don't want that. I have never stopped working. You know, I was very fast to get back in that fast lane. And so a lot of the things that I've done, I used to do. I know a lot of the same people. I live in the same place. I have the same mother, the same father who died before he could get sober, unfortunately. And I have a family, a lot of whom has gotten recovery. They may not be totally recovered, and they may think that they're civilians from time to time, but we don't do things the way we used to do. I mean, there used to be many car crashes, accidents, people falling off of roofs, lots of hospital visits, lots of drama. It doesn't happen around me. If it's happening, they ain't telling me. You know, they don't want me to know everything about their lives, even though I still am the oldest, and I will always be the oldest of these 5 of us. So I have had that gift, which is to have a constancy in my life, a serenity in my life. The eating disorder has finally, after all these years, led me to the solution that I always needed. It's the same old, same old. It's an allergy, and it's triggered by sugars and by grains and by potatoes and all the things that go into booze. Shouldn't have been a mystery to me. Shouldn't be a mystery to anybody, but it is. It's one of the deeper, denser mysteries of alcoholism and addiction, and the triggers that bring on certain behaviors that make us insane. You know, insane, crazy. I've been crazy with food as I was with booze. So I guess on many levels that I've had to go sideways to other avenues of recovery, which I have. I'm not afraid of that. It's the only thing in town, and if you get here, if you have any way to get into this group, do it, because it's where people tell the truth, and that's what I love about it. They tell the truth, and in that, they add the healing. I will say that my beautiful son struggled for years with his addiction and his heartbreaking inability to get sober. But in 1984, he surrendered. He went out to Minnesota, to the cold, icy regions. In February, he went on Valentine's Day, and he got sober. That was a glorious time, a glorious and amazing time for all of us. we had 7 years of that gift which comes and which just mends the family and mends all kinds of things. I had always stayed involved with him and was very much a part of a lot of the choices that he made in terms of where he went to try to get sober, to try to get well, to try to get an education, to try to straighten out. We'd had therapy over the years for long times. We were very, very close, but in his sobriety we got even closer, and that was a gift. And then, like happens, and you know, you have to, I guess, realize that this is an illness. It's described as an illness, and it is an illness: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And at close to 7 years, he relapsed. Family dramas, lack of a real perspective about how dependent we are, how codependent we are on other people, a lot of things. I mean, anybody's got a reason. And he relapsed, and on a bottle of very cheap champagne, he went into his garage in his home in St. Paul and turned on the engine and died of carbon monoxide poisoning, just as his grandfather on his father's side had done. Same story in a way. His grandfather was a drunk and had had an upset, physical and financial upset. As I said, you know, we all have upsets of every kind, but some of us don't get through them without paying the ultimate price, as Bill W. says. So he died by his own hand, and it was 18 years ago. I didn't have to drink, and I didn't have to drink because I heard people that I knew in recovery talking about getting through tragedies. You know, even if you think you've had the most terrible thing happen to you, the next day you meet somebody who has lost 2 children to suicide. It's not a punishment, it's not my uniqueness, it's what happens in life. The difference is today that I don't have to destroy my life because he destroyed his. And nothing that happens to me is an issue over which I need to destroy my life. As long as I stay tight wound up with this community of recovery and celebration, that today we have a different life, a different mind, probably a different spirit, and a different set of ambitions. I know my true ambition today. It's not what I thought it was. I like this this sense of being where people know what you're talking about, and you don't have to tell it all. But if you tell some, we get the essence of it. My grandmother was I guess you'd call her an Al-Anon, because she lived with alcoholism in her family. And she taught me this song a long time ago, and I always like to kind of finish things up with it because it gets us all to participate just a little bit. And it is written by a man who changed his whole life. His name was John Newton, and he was a bad guy. He was probably a drunk. I would wager that he was a drunk. And he was a slave captain of a ship in 1740s, 1750s, and he came to a terrible almost end when he was in a shipwreck, and he changed his whole life, wrote this song, turned his life over to the abolition of slavery, and we all know him through his incredible song, and I want you to join me in singing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was my